It's not just young people. But it's clear that young people are in the largest group. So it's important for us to realize that as we go forward. We've said it here 1,000 times. But here's a surprising statistic from this poll, this Pew Research Center's poll. The least educated are likely to be atheists. Here's what I mean. If you look at all those who report that they're atheists, the majority of them have either less than high school or a high school education, and some a little bit of college, but the smallest groups are those who are in graduate school. Now, I'm going to tell you this is the exact same thing for Christians. So don't get all puffy and think, well, as Christians, we're the smart ones, they're the dumb ones. No, I'm not saying that at all. But here's what I think we most of the time think in our culture. We think, wow, the media has kind of portrayed this. Atheist groups have tried to affirm this, that, you know, we're the thoughtful, reasonable group. We're the ones who are better educated. We know more than you silly Christians who don't know very much. We're the better educated group. And the more educated we become, the more likely we are to be an atheist. And if you would just get educated, you'd be an atheist too. That's kind of the view that I see over and over again when I'm listening to people on the atheist side kind of paint the demographic of what they believe atheists are compared to Christians. But the reality of it is that most atheists have less than a college degree for sure, many only a high school degree and less than a high school degree, and the smallest number of atheists are actually those with a graduate degree. Let me show you what the statistics show. The largest group, 57%, have less than a bachelor's degree. Now, 26% have got some college, but another, another 26% more have high school or less. Now think about that for a second. Only 16% of atheists report they have a postgraduate degree. So what I'm saying is, I don't want you to think anymore that I really can't engage in a conversation with my atheist friends because they're probably smarter and they're probably better educated than I am and they probably know more than I do, and I'm just somebody who don't have a big degree, I don't have a PhD in something, so how in the world am I ever going to engage somebody in a conversation when they're an atheist and they seem to have all these good reasons not to believe? Time out. It turns out that they're just like us. They're just like you. Wherever you are in the spectrum of possible educational background you may have, you know enough and you're smart enough to reach your friends who are non-believers, because it turns out the vast majority of non-believers are just like us. They aren't necessarily better educated, they aren't necessarily better versed in the sciences or in philosophy, and as a matter of fact, the smallest number of atheists are those who have a graduate degree. So that's something to think about. One more unsurprising statistic from this poll, and that is that women are more likely to be Christian than men. If you've been sitting in church very long and you've looked around at the pews around you, you've probably noticed that there are more women in the church than there are men. And that is disturbing to me in many ways. The statistics continue to bear this out. Right now, about 55% of Christians are women. Only 45% are men. And that is something we have to address. And there's probably some reason. I'm just going to say this, and you can take it however you want to take it, but I do think there's a difference in terms of our emotional response to things between men and women. I certainly notice it in my own marriage. I am far more likely to be analytical and too kind of rigid, logically thinking about certain issues, where my wife has got a much bigger heart than I do, and she can see. She's much more compassionate, I think, at times. She reads people better from an emotional perspective. She's just wired differently than me. And I think that we have a faith system right now in Christianity that is not wired as well for men as it is for women. If it's all about experience and singing songs of love and endearment to Jesus, I wouldn't be surprised to find that more women are involved in that activity than men. So I think there's something about the church the way it is right now that is more attractive to women, the Christian church, than it is to men. I mean, if I'm not just saying this off the top of my head, folks, the statistics bear it out. 55 to 45 women to men in the church. And guess what? Here's the surprising statistic you'll see from the other side. Nearly every other group is dominated by men. We're the only group that's upside down in this category. So for example, 52% of Jewish believers are men, 65% of Muslim believers are men, 51% of Buddhists and 62% of Hindus are men. In all those groups, the majorities are men, not women. Even more striking, I think, is the disparity between non-believers. It turns out that 68% of atheists are men, and 62% of agnostics are men, and 57% of that group we've been talking about, the nuns, are reported to be men. Very interesting. There is clearly Whatever we're doing as Christians, we're not doing it equally. It's not as we have a half and a half, 50-50. It's not that way. And whatever they're doing seems to appeal much more to men than to women. I think they've also got issues in terms of how they're appealing to people, but so do we. And I think it's time for us to kind of think about the impact of these numbers and how they might cause us then, as young Christians or old Christians, to respond and act based on what we see here numerically. Let's take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk a little bit and give you 5 takeaways, 5 things that I see from this poll that I think encourage me and motivate me to change the way I think about engaging the world around me as a Christian. We'll do that right after the break.
In addition to Jim's daily blog and weekly podcasts and videos, Jim continues to write books designed to help you become a better Christian casemaker. At coldcasechristianity.com, you'll find a link to Cold Case Christianity, a homicide detective investigates the claims of the Gospels, and Alive, a cold case approach to the resurrection. These resources will help you defend what you believe and share it with others. Connect with Cold Case Christianity on social media. Visit the Cold Case Christianity homepage and click the social media icons on the top right toolbar. Jim is active on Facebook and Twitter, posting the best apologetics articles from over 250 Christian blogs around the country. You'll also find links to Jim's Instagram, Pinterest, and Google Plus accounts, along with the link to the Cold Case Christianity YouTube page. Stay connected with Cold Case Christianity and become a better Christian casemaker.
Okay, I want to give you 5 ways to rethink the way you've been sharing your Christian worldview based on what I'm seeing in the latest Pew Research Center's poll about religious identity. I'm seeing those 3 things that are surprising and the 3 things that aren't so surprising. And as I look at these statistics online, I look at them in the poll, they give me a certain takeaway, a certain action plan, a call to action based on the surprising and unsurprising statistics of this poll. So let me give you 5 things that I think might motivate you as well. Here's the first thing. Clearly, it's easy, it's tempting to panic when you see that your religious worldview is shrinking. And I think that is the case here. There is no doubt that we see that Christianity is shrinking in our culture, right? But look, 70% of the people who identify themselves in any religious worldview would identify themselves as Christians. And those that are leaving Christianity aren't jumping all the way over to atheism. Instead, they're in a category that they might have been at for years. They were nominal in their Christian beliefs, perhaps, and now they just decided, I'm just going to tell you so. I don't really have Christian beliefs, although I still might go to Christmas. And spirituality and religious worldview or religious behavior does have some value to me, and 39% say that they still believe in God in some way. But they're not going to identify themselves as Christian. We may not even be seeing much of a shift at all in that direction, but it is clear we are seeing a shift. So what I want us first to do is take a deep breath. It's easy to say, oh, we've got to get busy, we've got to take back America. Come on, folks. Okay, we're not at that point yet. We're not quite there yet. So let's be moderate in our approach, because I think a winsome nature, one that isn't seen as panicking, one that isn't seen as fight or flight, one that is just reasonably going to address the issues, I think that's the way to go forward. Number 2, I think it's important for us, though, even though the numbers are still in our favor, to take the poll seriously. Here's what we don't see. We don't see a trend where sometimes we take the poll and we have high numbers, and sometimes we take the poll and our numbers are declining, and sometimes they're increasing, and sometimes they're declining. It's not a peak and valley kind of a trend. Instead, what we have is a steady downward trend in which we are less and less Christian as a nation. And I think that's important for us to recognize. That's the kind of the way we're headed. And it's easy to say, well, let's just wait. We can wait till the crisis point before we do anything. I don't think that's the way to go either. I'm not going to panic, but I am going to take the poll seriously, and I am going to respond seriously, and I'm going to change the way I live as a Christian. If you're somebody who's had a very kind of emotional response to your faith, and therefore when somebody asks you, why should I believe this, we're probably ill-equipped to give kind of non-emotional, reason-based, historically based, evidentially based answers for why you believe what you believe. It's probably time for us to change the way we're thinking about our faith. Third thing, get involved. If you've been using some excuse, like I'm not trained well enough, and the people I'm dealing with seem to be smarter, and they seem to have a lot of answers. Really, the data we see in the poll is very revealing in that regard. The smallest category of atheists actually have graduate degrees. Most of them are just like everybody else in the population. They are either high school educated or even less, or they have some college but not a BA, not a bachelor's degree. So they got less than a bachelor's. Folks, whoever you think you're dealing with, you're smart enough. You're clever enough. You're educated enough to reach somebody. Get in the game. Don't think that, oh gosh, I have to wait and have... It's important for us to study, don't get me wrong. But don't think that you have to be a PhD in order to be impactful in your world. As a matter of fact, that's not the case. And the statistics clearly show that. Number 4, let's focus on young people. Folks, I've said it here how many thousands of times. And if you're young, someone who's young, who's watching this show, and I hope that you are, because I think this is the most important group in the church. 15 to 30 to me are the most important people in the church. Because these are the folks who can't pick their friend group the way that me in my 50s, I can pick my friend group. I can certainly decide who I'm going to hang out with, who I'm going to have over for dinner. If I wanted to, I could craft a circle of friends that were all just like me. Same age, same worldview. I mean, it wouldn't be hard to do, would it? Most of us do this. But young people can't do that, especially when they're in university. In the university, they're going to meet lots of people who don't share their worldview, and they're going to be encountering a professor's staff, a staff of professors, a faculty that really does not necessarily agree with their worldview and are probably more likely to be hostile toward the Christian worldview than in favor of the Christian worldview. They can't pick their people group, their friend group, the way that we can. This is the group that needs our help. I've said it 1,000 times. If you're going to be a Christian case maker, someone like me who's going to take the time to write articles on a website or do a broadcast like this, we need to be focused on young people. That's where the action is. And I think the statistics still reveal that this is the group that needs our attention the most. Last thing, at some point as a church, we've got to find a way to engage men at a higher level. Now, I'm not going to be so ridiculous as to tell you that I know exactly why it is men are in or out of the church. But I think that whatever you're seeing, you're probably seeing what I'm seeing, which is that the people who volunteer most, the people who are the most active in church, the people who attend most regularly, folks, those are still women. And we need to change that. We need to change that if we're going to impact the world around us. Because it seems for some reason that the most thoughtful people who identify themselves with their male identity the most are not in Christianity, they're in every other group. They're the highest numbers in atheism, agnosticism, but even in all the other theistic worldviews. The Jewish worldview, the Muslim, Hindus, Buddhists, they all outnumber Christians in terms of their male attendance. What is the deal with that? At some point, we're going to have to address that issue. And men, if you're a man in the church and you are an attender, folks, we have to be role models for the next generation. We have to show that the way God has designed us as men has an important role to play in the church. Your masculinity counts in the Christian worldview, and we want to model that for other young men who, for whatever reason, seem to struggle with the idea that I can really be a manly man and be in the Christian church where I'm going to sing love songs to Jesus. Wow, there seems to be a bit of a tension there for a lot of people. We have to help people work through that, and we can do that best, I think, by modeling what it is to be a guy's guy, yet still be a follower of Christ. So I hope that helps you to take a look at what this poll teaches us, what the kind of takeaways are from this poll, and I hope it helps you to be a better Christian case maker. Join us again here next week at Cold Case Christianity.
Thanks for joining us at the Cold Case Christianity broadcast. If you're interested in more information about this week's topic, please visit coldcasechristianity.com. For a thorough investigation of the reliability of the New Testament Gospels and the case for Christianity, be sure to purchase Cold Case Christianity. A homicide detective investigates the claims of the Gospels. It's available wherever books are sold.